If you're tired of playing against the Caro-Kann and end up in boring positions all the time, the exchange variation is your weapon. I'm going to show you how I play it and explain the plans that work all the way to the master level and beyond. So why the exchange Caro? Well, the exchange Caro-Kann starts with e4, c6, d4, d5, takes. A lot of people say it's trash, but it's not. It's equal. It's a reliable way to get a small but safe space advantage, and it'll punish all the lazy Caro players who only know main lines. While this may not be the main line, which would actually be advancing the pawn forward, it is a very respected line that a lot of grandmasters play. Now, after the exchange, bishop d3 is the main move. This is the starting position, and we will talk about how each side should develop and all plans in the middle games. So instead of having to memorize theory, you can understand your opening and play it better than anybody else could. Commonly, black plays Nxh6. Other moves don't really matter because they transpose or they're just plain bad. We go c3, knight f6, bishop f4. Now, as you can see from the arrow, bishop g4 is the main line. However, this just leads to positions like queen b3, black queen defends the pawn, and after a couple of normal developing moves, we get to a position like this, where you now see we have a connect 3, black is a connect 3. So, as you know, because you have the connect 3, you have to play on the king side. You want to use your space advantage, push forward with pawns and pieces, while black tries to do the same with their pawns and pieces on the queen side. But we have a lot more firepower readily available for the king side than black does for the queen side, which gives us that slight positional advantage. So instead, let's imagine black plays a solid e6. Again, we play knight f3. Bishop d6 maybe. But we can take, castle, rook e1. Now the idea in this position, we want to go knight e5. So let's just say black plays a6 to try and develop their pawn minority on the queen side. We go knight e5. They can't take because that runs into a fork. And now what we want to do is f4, knight d2, queen f3, rook e3, rook f1, and just bombard their king side with all our pieces. And it can get really venomous if black doesn't stop it or just thinks that our attack doesn't exist. Because our attack very much exists. So they have to either get counter attack on the queen side or somehow defend our attack on the king side, which in either case is fun for white. Now, in most of these positions, a knight on d3 is very useful. For example, you can go back to the position we just were at actually. If there was ever a knight on d3, let me just make that happen. Bishop c2, rook b8 maybe, knight d3. So, not this position exactly, but I want to show an example. A knight on d3 is perfect. It is a god knight. Now, obviously in this position, b4 is still possible, but if you were to imagine we had a pawn on a3, our queen was out, our pawn was on f4, our knight was on d2, coming to f3 and then e5, it would be golden position for us. So, a knight on d3, very good knight, perfect placement. Now, there is another way to play, which would create a different structure. Also, I forgot to mention the structure with the whole pawn on e6 and the pawn on c3, which creates this sort of structure. This is called the Carlsbad Structure. This is a very important structure, and so it's less important to learn exact lines and more important to learn how to play certain types of structures like these. Now going back, there can be a different type of structure with g6. Now, we go knight f3, bishop g7, castles. Now, a lot of these, black tries to get rid of their bad light squared bishop, but we're completely okay with that. We can take, knight d2, castles, go knight e5. Now, again, the same plans, because that's the fun part of this. Our structure will always stay the same, so we can always do the same thing. This doesn't mean just do it because, but in most positions, it is the best strategy. Now, even if they take, you could actually take with the pawn in some situations. Now, this one, it works. Here, queen e2, rook e1, bishop g3, f4, knight f3, whatever you want. Just create an attack. But this works as well. If the knight ever moves, that'd be a very, very bad move, because if they go here, they now lose their main protector of the dark squares. We can use our knight, our queen, and our rooks to try and gang up on the dark squares and attack the king. especially because of the weakness. So that's what we like about these structures. However, black doesn't have to castle. If you go knight d2, there's e6, and then black's plan would be like queen e7, castle. But again, knight e5. Queen e7, we don't worry. Knight f3, we just wait. If they castle, we can now attack on the queen side. Because, yes, while our space advantage is on the king side, if their king is on the queen side, we'll attack the queen side. And it's going to be very, very difficult for them to create any sort of attack on our king. So that's why these positions get very, very comfortable. So, with all that in mind, we can go back to the starting position of the Carlsbad, which would be here. And you know the main ideas. Knight f3, knight e5, knight df3, castles, rook ae1, f4, and attack the king. A knight on d3 is the best placement. Try to create some sort of attack, but also make sure that you know how to counter black's attacks. Now, black will be mostly playing on the queen side with plans like a6, b5, but again, our bishop is really strong here. Make sure that their b8 square for the rook isn't that useful. So now they have to try and play with their pawns instead. But if we can go a3, stopping any potential b4, which would be pretty annoying to break up this chain, we'll be set. Okay, so to recap, we can go back to the starting position. Exchange Caro starts off with e4, c6, d4, d5, takes, bishop d3. Now, this isn't a lot like other variations, like the fantasy e5 and then h4, which is the advance, the tall variation. There's not going to be a lot of sacrificing immediately here. You will definitely not be winning by move 10, by move 12. This will be a much more positional game. But that doesn't mean there aren't tactics involved. And this can be very venomous, especially if black doesn't know what they're doing. And you can catch them off guard with your positional understanding of the position. You want to look for tactics on the king side. And you always want to place your knight on e5 to get to d3 and assert dominance. I've linked this entire PGN file in the description so you can study and practice it however much you want. That's how you squeeze the Caro-Kann in the exchange variation. It's super easy to use and can be very annoying for your opponent if they've only prepped the main lines. Like and subscribe if you want more positional attacking openings and strategies, and I'll see you in the next one.